The biggest what ifs in college football this year, what's on your mind? What are you asking yourself? What are you sitting on the back porch with Uncle Lester, maybe in the hammock, maybe in the upright swing, saying, well, Uncle Lester, what if this happened? Well, I got 4 of them, and you had several more than this, but let's just start in Tallahassee. What if it's real? What if the smoke from Tallahassee is real? What if Florida State really does win the ACC this year? Think about the ripple effect. First off, we've got a major, prominent brand returning to the main table of college football. And I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, if Florida State is for real this year, the only reason they're hyped up this year are for reasons that would extend well beyond this year, i.e., they've recruited well enough. They don't have one of the most talented rosters in the sport yet. We detailed that the other night, but well enough. They have portaled very well. I mean, they have attacked that portal like few other programs have. They are developing. The culture is in place that they took their sweet time putting in place, and that's exactly how a culture is built. They don't pop out of microwaves. Long-lasting, sustainable cultures, they don't pop out of microwaves. And I'm saying all that because if Florida State were to win the ACC this year, it would be validation. It would be validation that Mike Norvell's for real. I don't know that football people doubted he was for real, but some casuals did. Some folks wanted him fired. No one will go on record with that now, but I've got the screenshots. I mean, whomst am I to share in my private DMs? But anyway, if they win the ACC, sure, you've got Florida State re-emerging, and if they win the ACC, we may very well be looking at Florida State college football playoff participant in the year of our Lord 2023, but also there's this other little tidbit, because this is the what-if game. And what if Florida State wins the ACC? Well, that would mean, Josh, that means Clemson didn't win the ACC, and we'd all of a sudden have to look up there as well. Now, we don't know the details. Maybe they just went back and forth, and they played an instant classic in Week 4, and they play another instant classic in the ACC title game. Well, if that's the case, and Clemson falls 38-35 both times, it's obvious the bold prediction from the other night about them having the top defense in the ACC probably did not come to fruition, but I can't really fault them all that much. But if Florida State wins this thing because they're superior and Clemson just, for whatever reason, even with the new OC, it does not spark life into that program, then we start comparing philosophies, don't we? Then we start, and by we, I don't even have to participate in this because it would come from Clemson. It would come from inside the camp of the orange and white up there, and purple occasionally. They would start saying, are we really going to be bypassed by this guy in Tallahassee who's taking advantage of all that the sport gives him, transfer portal, in other words, while we voluntarily neglect the transfer portal? Because if that happens, if Florida State wins the ACC, people will view it as a referendum on the two approaches. You know that, and I know that. Right now, it's not like that because Florida State hasn't done anything of note on the national stage. But if and when they do, and that's the approach, and Clemson hasn't changed their approach, yeah, a lot of what-if ramifications if they win the ACC. Let's go to the SEC. And I got to get a little negative here on you for a second. The Bama over-under win total's 10 right now, and a lot of folks are taking the under. I don't know if you're actually taking the under. I know you're telling me that you're taking the under. It's one of America's favorite pastimes right now. Hop on Twitter, hop on the gram, and tell Josh, Bama's not winning 10 games. I'm like, okay, college football citizen, show me the bet slip. Some of you have, many more of you have not. But here's my what if. What if you're right? What if Alabama does not win the SEC West again this year, so they're not in Atlanta again? I guess the obvious question is, well, what went wrong? Did quarterback not pan out for him? Is that secondary not quite as good as old JP thought they were going to be? What is it? How many games did they win? I guess would be my second question. Is it an 11-1 season where they have some game of the year candidate against LSU and LSU beats them and all of a sudden Bama's on the outside looking in, but hey, maybe they're still a fringe playoff contender? Or do they go 9-3? Do they fall to Texas, which wouldn't be a conference game, but it would be a precursor, maybe of vulnerability? And then do they lose at Texas A&M? Do they drop one to Tennessee or LSU? Or do they get clipped by like Hugh Freeze and Auburn randomly at the end of the year? I do know this. It would be mighty uncomfortable because as I detailed the other night, I've got a massive Alabama audience, and a large chunk of that audience is college age. And I love all you guys, but you're not ready for it. I've tried to get you ready, but I can't. There is really no kit to get a 19-year-old diehard Alabama fan ready for what a 9-3, 8-4 season feels like. And I don't think you're going to experience it this year. It is not my prediction, certainly, but this is the what-if game. This is where we can recklessly throw hypotheticals out there with impunity. Because it's just what if, it's just what if. You guys are not ready for that, and I hope you don't experience it for a long, long time. Now, I will be here for you, and we will probably have our own little separate show, just a Bama Cope special for if and when they do finally fall back to earth a little bit. But if they don't win the West, yeah, you got the 1,000,001 questions about Alabama. Who won the West? It's a fair question, right? Colin, Jesse, yeah, who won the West? Well, I think the first guess out there would be LSU, because LSU's the next highest odds-on favorite. But I just have this crazy scenario, and anytime I elongate the A, you know it's about to be pretty crazy. What if it is someone like Texas A&M? What if they do win all those close games they lost last year? What if Bobby Petrino really was the heel that they needed at just the right time? We need a bad guy winning divisions in college football. We need a bad guy program, and we need a fan base, and I think A&M is that fan base, that is happy to play the heel role. Not everything can be WrestleMania 17. You can't have good guy versus good guy. Someone's got to turn heel. They did it at the worst moment imaginable that night in Houston, Texas. But outside of College Station, no one likes Bobby Petrino. Outside of College Station, very few people have a net positive impression of Jimbo Fisher. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing if you can embrace it. Well, what if they not only embrace it, they embrace it to the point where they take down Alabama in College Station and they win the West, and all of a sudden it's Georgia versus who? Georgia versus A&M? I thought there was an SEC bylaw where they couldn't play each other. Nope, that's just in the regular season. They could face each other in Atlanta. So yeah, as you can see, if you punch the middle of the waterbed, which I did not finance, 3-year Letterman, then it reverberates well beyond just Tuscaloosa. Here's one for you. Let's just go out to the Lone Star State. Let's leave the SEC for one last time. I don't like saying Texas is back. I don't even like the nomenclature. So I'm just going to say, what if Texas is for real? What if they really are a Tier 1 team this year? Now, I'm not going to traffic in that whole Texas as a program thing, even if they win the Big 12 this year. Because all that would be is Texas doing what they always were supposed to do anyway. So it's not proof, even if they make the playoff this year. It's not this total, definitive, like rock-solid proof that they're back as a program, although it would be a pretty darn solid indication. Even I have to admit that. But what if Texas just is for real? What if they devour food in week 1? And if you're listening on podcast, yes, they play rice in week 1. What if they do go and just beat Alabama in week 2, but at the very least play a competitive game there? That'd be one of the most charged environments of the year, by the way. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, so I'm not going to double dip in what I have to say about that game. But Texas wins the Big 12 this year. What if they're in the playoff? What if Sark validates a lot of what they hope about him? What if he proves wrong what a lot of the rest of the country doubts about him? A lot of doubt around Steve Sarkisian. The whole cannot and have not versus will not, that thing. If they are for real, then they would win the Big 12 if they are for real. So we'd have that. Maybe that includes a playoff trip, but they would be springboarding their way into the SEC off of that momentum. And it would also mean that, okay, well, if Steve Sarkisian's formula works, it's only going to get stronger because their roster talent is only going to increase. In fact, substantially increase. They're a top 5 recruiter every year now. And that class this year, I think will in many ways mirror the class they had last year. Also, we've talked many times about how they are just stacking quarterbacks. So not all of them are going to stay there, but it doesn't matter. They're always going to have at least 2 high-quality options. So they're not going to be one of those programs that's vulnerable to QB1 going down and poverty elsewhere in the room. If it happened this year, they'd have Malik Murphy and Arch Manning sitting right there waiting to play. And they've also vastly upgraded line of scrimmage talent. They lost Bijan Robinson. I still think they are very, very good at tailback. I don't really need to talk about the embarrassment of riches they have in the wide receiver room. Defense, we can talk about that another day. They are trending, at least in the right direction there, but that's preseason talk. If they win it, if they're for real, that means I'm just right about all that. Is the world ready? I've asked this question like 3 times in the past month. Is the world ready for Texas being back? Is Texas fan ready for Texas being back? I talk about the 19-year-old Alabama fan who's never experienced a down year for Alabama. Well, think about the 19-year-old Texas fan and think about the fact that they were a very, very small child when Colt got hurt in that national title game against Alabama, and the fact that they've not been back since. What does 19-year-old Texas fan all of a sudden do? And then imagine, I always think about this, the folks who were enrolled at the University of Texas in this case. You're there when you're there. You don't control the football program. But imagine if you just so happen to be a true freshman when Texas re-emerges. It's like being a freshman at Alabama circa 2008 or 9 or something like that. And, you know, your older brother who's 7 years older, he's telling you stories about Mike Price, and he's telling you stories about Mike Shula, and you're like, couldn't be me. Dude named Saban rolled into town. Hey, someone's eventually going to be able to talk like that in Austin, Texas. Maybe it is the class of 2020, what would that be, 2028? 9, 30? Good luck, I guess is my lasting message there. And lastly, they got 1 double-digit win season since 2010, by the way, according to my teleprompter. And that concludes the use of the teleprompter for the night. What if Ohio State doesn't win the Big Ten East? Well, another doomsday scenario. Yeah, let's go ahead. Scenario. It's a doomsday scenario. I think we all know that. I think everyone up there from Cincinnati to Dayton and everywhere in between understands they need to win the division this year. Now, I say that, which allows you the opportunity to go in the comment section and say, okay, well, if they have to, what happens if they don't? I don't really know. Wailing, yes. Gnashing of teeth, yes. Throwing furniture out of windows, torch, pitchfork, check all the boxes. Yes, that would happen. But that's not the question. The question is straight up, would Ryan Day be fired? I think it's insanity to suggest it. That's my opinion on the matter. There are scores of other folks that wear scarlet and gray during the fall that disagree with that. I've explained their whole plight. They've explained it very well, actually. They look at it and they say, we don't hold ourselves to a 10-win standard here. You look at the schedule. We've got advantages over everyone in virtually every compartment that it takes to win at a high level in this sport. There are really no areas we're hamstrung big time as an athletic department. I said big time because I know the board over at Bucknuts would correct me on that, and they would point out A, B, C, and D. You've got first world problems up there. You want real world problems, leave Columbus, Ohio. Go talk to some of those MAC schools that surround you. They got real world problems. Kent State is struggling to field a program this year because the from coast to coast, everyone just raided them. Really sad story, actually. So if Ohio State doesn't win the East, this is the last year that they have division play up there, by the way. If they don't win the East, they don't go to the Big Ten championship game. Probably means they lost to Michigan again. Maybe they lost to Penn State and Michigan, whomst knows amongst us. So uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. And then we also, outside of just the uncomfortability factor of, sucks to be Ryan Day in that scenario, but you also have to ask, does that mean that Harbaugh just ripped off another one? Or did James Franklin and Penn State emerge? Like, what happened up there? Interesting. Inquiring minds would like to know. Those are some of the what ifs I'm looking at. This is one of many things that makes this sport great. You notice we didn't fly off the handle. That was not a hot take fest. It's okay to say you don't know in the middle of summer. Preview magazine season is upon us. We are awash in predictions, and we will make our fair share on this show in due time. But it's okay to just speculate. You know, like between sets at the gym, at the barbecue joint tomorrow when you're killing time before you have to go back to work. The kinds of things that we would talk about there, it's okay when someone puts a microphone in front of your face to just talk that way for a little while. And that's what we just did. I don't know why I'm talking like Bob Ross right now. I can't paint to save my life.